Hey listeners, you know we love Bolet's customized bowls where we get to create our own combo of bold flavors with grains, veggies, and protein.
Like my current favorite of steak au jus with Brussels sprouts on a bed of forbidden black rice.
That sounds great, especially when it's smothered in my favorite creamy garlic sauce.
Que rico! That does sound great. You know what else sounds great?
Their strawberry chia seed pudding, delicious.
That too, but also the fact they now have locations in Aventura and Fort Lauderdale, both offering wraps featuring signature spice blends, sauces, and marinades.
Okay, wait, espérate. So our listeners can enjoy a fresh and customized Bolet bowl or wrap in Broward?
Así mismo. They can experience Bolet at various locations throughout Florida and even Georgia and Virginia.
Meaning we can all be part of Bolet's mission to inspire bold living through the power of fresh food. And who doesn't want to live boldly?
Exactly. So visit bolet.com today to find your nearest location or place an order for pickup. There's no day like today to enjoy fresh food to fuel your life. The holidays are back. It's like we just finished going trick-or-treat, and now it's time for Thanksgiving, el ho-ho-ho. But that also means it's time to find the perfect gift for your dad, husband, brother, carajo, even for yourself. You know where this is going. That's right. Get them the perfect jean. I absolutely swear by these jeans, from bandit black to midnight blue to light blue ice, which is also ripped because, as we know, the only thing better than comfort is edgy comfort. As a Miami boy, I even have their jean shorts. Porque in Miami, we need quality shorts that are stylish and comfortable. Pero ish, you're saying, my boyfriend, abuelo, tío, doesn't need any jeans this holiday season. To that I say, you're wrong, because every man does need the perfect jean. Pero okay, if that is true, we still got you covered. Just in time for winter, the perfect jean now has extremely comfortable hoodies. Made using organic cotton, these hoodies are just as comfortable as the jeans. They're perfect for those chilly winters up north, or if you're visiting DJ's house, because as we know, he keeps the temperature at a reasonable setting of tundra. So it is the holidays, which means we've got a gift for you. Use code Pero20 at theperfectjean.nyc for 20% off your order. Así mismo, Pero20 gets you 20% off the jeans, the hoodies, everything. Jeans and hoodies sounds like two great items to open under the tree to us. So this holiday, your khakis and get the perfect gift from the perfect jean. And don't forget to use code Pero20 for 20% off your order.
Hey everyone, this is DJ.
And this is Ish.
And this is Season 5 of Pero Let Me Tell You. Bueno, on that note, that's a great note to start. So, welcome everybody to episode 233 of Pero Let Me Tell You. And today, listeners, you're just going to have to deal with me because Ish is on freaking vacation. Like, who goes on vacation at the end of the year, right?
I mean, only
Only like 50% of the world population, right? So joining us today is one of like my favorite people, which is David from the Shiver podcast, who not only is he a fellow podcaster, but he's a friend, and you've been a co-host before.
Yes, once before with Ish, but never with you.
Right, never
because
just us.
you were on vacation.
Because I was on vacation or I was doing something else. So to commemorate today, because this is a special day that's you and I hanging out and talking, we actually have some food and we have champagne. Well, we have Prosecco. So
we've got the champers.
So listeners, okay, let's pop this.
Hopefully not.
We take a fancy
in
some.
my eye, yeah.
We're having. Okay, David, come on. I played baseball for some years. You know, I didn't make it to the.
What'd you play? What position?
Outfield, like either left or center field. I always wanted to play shortstop, but I couldn't because I was a lefty.
That's what I played. I played shortstop.
I always wanted to play shortstop, but I'm a lefty, so you know. But I played baseball until I was like 16, and I was actually pretty good. I would say I was okay. I was no superstar. I was okay. If you hear my cousins talk, you would say that I didn't even know where the bases were. Because, they want to make themselves, better.
Well, that's what family does.
Right. Yeah, they messed up with your insecurities, right?
I have to say, that pour was pro level right there.
Viste.
Yes.
So it's funny because I'm not much of a drinker, but I love me some champagne or Prosecco. So, my friend, cheers.
Ching ching.
Here's to episode 233. And I know listeners, a lot of you are like, driving. So, here's a non-alcoholic, non-container. Cheers for everybody. So,
cheers.
So thank you again for being on our show, David.
Of course. Well, thank you for having me. I love you and Ish, and I love the show, and it's nice to be wanted.
It's nice to be wanted. Anyway, bueno, before we get to the nitty gritty, guys, I just want to run through some, housekeeping stuff, because if not, Ishmael's going to kick my butt, since he's the PR guy. So we just want to remind you that December 17th, we have a Ping Pong Pollo pop-up, and we are going to be seen. We're going to be at Unseen Creatures by Bird Road in the Palmetto. So for those of you who haven't checked us out, check us out. We have our Guayaba y Queso wings. We have a Santero, which is a really new popular flavor. I don't know if you...
haven't tried that one.
You haven't tried that one because you don't...
I don't partake in the meats.
We're working on a vegan wing.
I would be eternally grateful.
Because two of our sauces are vegan. So we're going to be having a pop-up at Unseen Creatures, again, December 17th. Thank you to all of you, by the way. We had many listeners come up to us last week at Croquetapalooza, which was an awesome event. And we had a bunch of people come up and they liked our chicken, but they also gave us some compliments, and they were saying hello regarding the podcast. So thank you to all of you who came out to see us and to say hi at Croquetapalooza. And then finally, the holidays are here. They're a couple of weeks away. So what better gift than to give the gift of Pero Let Me Tell You. And you can have that through one of our many t-shirts.
They are fantastic. I will say they are of excellent quality.
They are.
And they always get a chuckle, at the very least. And usually more than a chuckle. Something akin to a laugh.
Yeah. I like that. So we are at tpublic.com, pero let me tell you, at tpublic.com. You can also go to our Instagram bio, and you could just visit, again, tpublic.com. We also have some links for our merch in the first, those pinned tweet post now that you have on Instagram.
Right.
So you have the link there. So check it out. Our Lechon Life shirt is really, really popular during Christmas time, Lechon and all that. So, and by the way, if you guys wear your Lechon shirt Life, for those of you who've had it before, bought it last year, please tag us. We would love to show, our Pero Primos wearing, our merch. So,
do you still have the Sereno shirt?
We have the Sereno.
That is my favorite.
That is your favorite, right?
That is my favorite.
Thank you. I wrote that. A killer mystical dew. Sereno is really such a thing, as I sip my champagne. Sereno really is such a thing that to the Anglos, it's just oh no, that dew or that mist. But Sereno?
No, it is more than that. It is the mythical killer of many a child in the Cuban countryside.
It is. And what's incredible is that till this day, Tristan's 8. My mom will be whenever we're at my parents' house and, it's
Cubre
late
la
and we're
cabeza porque el sereno le coge.
Sereno lo coge. And I'm mind you, the car's 10 feet away. 10 feet away, Mom. 10 feet away, but, whatever. So, so did you go to Art Basel?
We did not go to Art Basel. No, last weekend was, it was insane. We had a lot of stuff scheduled, and I was not able to make it to Basel.
Do you like going to Art Basel?
I do, yes. I am, how do you say you're a douche without calling yourself a douche? I don't know. So I'm that, right? And I love anything that has to do with art or anything that pretends to be art.
Pretends to be art. What would you say pretends to be art? The banana with the tape?
The banana with the tape, yes. Now, I do know an artist who does show at Basel, and he told me that that was absurd.
Yeah.
That it wasn't art. and it did not sell for the amount that it sold for.
Oh, really? That was untrue?
It's a way to create buzz for yourself, which I get, and that's fine. It's I guess it's something that's done in the art world. He says that it's very common.
So the banana did not sell for the millions or whatever it sold for?
No.
Allegedly?
No, it did not. But the person who bought it will say that they sold it for that
Of course.
amount.
So for those listeners who don't know what Art Basel is, it's this art expo, if you will, that happens in Miami every year, and it's one of these things that it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger each year. And they have a lot of different types of art, whether it's more traditional paintings, abstract art, sculptures, but it's become also very pop arty as well. And
there's a lot of pop art. I'd say it's mostly pop art now.
But now it is, yeah.
And, but there's also like performance art.
Right.
There's all sorts
but it
of
used
stuff.
to be this event that when it started some years back was a very Miami event insofar that it hadn't really caught the international eye as much. So it was a very big local event. I mean, I went several times, especially when I lived downtown, just walking there. And it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Now people from around the world come to Art Basel. But I think that...
And it's all over the city now.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of the criticism has come in the recent years that Art Basel now has become sort of like a show-off place. Like, for example, this year, one of the more notorious exhibits they had, I'm sure you saw it. You saw the whole thing with the ATM?
No, what was this?
Okay, so this is one of those tell me you're from Miami without telling me you're from Miami situations. So they had an exhibit that was art that it had it was an ATM machine, and the ATM machine had like an iPad or like a screen on it. So it would take your picture. When you would put in your card, it would put the balance that you had in your account. So then it would take a picture of you and it would rank you.
Oh, I see.
Right? So it was a thing to be like, oh my God, who has the most money?
Right.
So now people would start lining up around the machine to see if, like, when the next person went, if they were the person with the most money.
Right.
So obviously people that now were like millionaires and had a lot of money in their bank account made it a point to go there to see, show off how much money they had. And it was like, come on. That's such a Miami thing.
Well, it's also a gimmick because the amount of money in your bank account doesn't necessarily tell anyone how much you're worth.
Yeah.
Sure, it tells you how liquid you are.
Right.
But what about other assets?
Right. It doesn't have like your real estate, your investments, which, that would be the smarter, investment, a lot
Yeah,
of
but then
people
it would have
say.
to conduct a background check on you, and now we're talking about an extended wait period to find out if you're the wealthiest in Miami.
But it was such a thing because, like, now everybody was like taking video of it and putting it on Instagram.
Right.
Like, oh, actually, I know somebody that she put it on her Instagram that when the person was taking out money, they went to number one.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if they were subsequently superseded by somebody else. They probably were. But that person went to number one. And they were like, oh, my God, high-fiving and, like, hugging and kissing. I'm like, is this really, like, a goal?
I think it is for a lot of people. Yeah. Like, I know people who, like, they don't necessarily care about how they become wealthy. Their goal in life is to become wealthy.
Right.
And success doesn't necessarily have to be a part of that.
Even if it's temporary, right?
Yeah.
Because I love how all these people that invest in, like, now Bitcoin or FTX or whatever, in their portfolio, they're billionaires, right?
Well, not anymore.
Right, but
FTX.
but if something, but even like people that invest in Silicon Valley, like, the whole thing with Theranos with Elizabeth Holmes, she was like worth billions of dollars when she was in her early 20s. But was she? Like,
no, not really.
Right. So it's like, are you?
It was valued at that. But,
Right. So what does that mean? Like, I mean, I know what it means, but what does that really mean? If like your valuation could be billions of dollars, so okay, that's how much you're worth. But it's so volatile that, like, with literally a shift of the winds, you could lose that overnight.
Well, it's also, I mean, it's a construct. It's worth only the amount that we allow it to be worth. And money is the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's really only worth its physical value is, you know, in the paper that it's printed on.
Yeah.
Which is not worth much.
Right.
In fact, $1 is worth the same as $20 or $100.
Right. And we don't have the gold reserves anymore.
No. So it's worth whatever the government tells you it's worth. And we just accept that. But that's moving into a very existential area.
What was it? This is like venturing off into something else now. I forgot. Was it in the Netherlands who at one point, this was, you know, centuries ago, their stock market was a seed. It was tulips. It was tulip seeds. You never heard of that?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that.
Wow. Los tulipanes tienen mucho valor. Pero yeah, I mean, I every year when Art Basel comes, I'm kind of like, should I go? Should I not go? There's a part of me that wants to go because I do like art.
Right.
But then there's a part of me that doesn't want to deal with now, like, not even the pomp and circumstance, doesn't want to deal with like the pretentiousness.
Right.
Because now it's about going to Art Basel and putting it on Instagram.
That's to me, it's like voting. You know, where it's like, if you didn't take a picture of the I voted sticker,
Right.
did you even vote?
Right. That's like going to the gym.
Right.
If you didn't post your gym selfie, did you work out?
Did you go to the gym? No, you didn't. You didn't get your gains in for the day if you didn't. So, and I'm not really about that, you know? So I like the old Basel, and I hate to sound like an old fogey, like a get off my lawn guy. But I like what Basel was. In the same way that, like, I really loved the live music scene that Miami had. You know, places places like Tobacco Road, places like Churchill's that aren't around anymore. And sure, like you go to where Tobacco Road was, and now you have this gorgeous mall with all these fantastic stores, and it's making a hell of a lot more money than it did before. But at what cost? You know, the culture is gone.
Yeah, the culture is little by little, or maybe not that little by little, disappearing, and now we just have like retail and, you know, and all these high ends. And look, I'm not hating on that because, like, for example, the mall you're talking about, Brickell City Center, it is a beautiful mall, and I actually love going there.
We go fairly often.
I love going there. Casa Tua, the Italian.
Oh yes.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
it's like insane. But, you know, as I always say, there has to be a balance, right? You know, yes, progress is great. Building is great. You know, having new things, new restaurants, new stores, that's great. But you have to have a balance. And when developers have so much power and, you know, this history, because people always say, oh, Miami's such a young city. Well, it is.
Yes, but there is history here.
There is a lot of history, but you have to preserve it in order for...
And I was actually going to use that same exact word, you know, progress, but preservation.
Yes.
There needs to be some of that there. You know, places like, you know, for some reason, that mentality exists on the beach because places like the Fontainebleau have been updated, but really, I mean, the design language is still the same.
Yeah.
You know, the Delano, some of these, you know, iconic hotels, you know, you think Miami and you think Art Deco still.
Yeah.
So why can't that happen elsewhere?
Yeah. Into like a lot of different places. Look, I heard now that they want to demolish the cultural center downtown where History Miami was, where the public library is. And I'm like, you know, because I had read some criticisms of it, which it is true that place is built like a fortress. You know, for those of you who are familiar with it, in downtown Miami, where like our civic center is, there's like the history museum, the Miami History Museum, History Miami. The science museum was in the art museum used to be there, which now is in more on the bay, the Perez Art Museum, and the public library,
which is great.
And you know, there's a criticism that was made that structure was built in the early 80s, and it's sort of like a Spanish colonial style, but it was sort of built like a fortress, and it's very kind of, you have to go up that ramp, and it's not accessible to like pedestrian. It's not pedestrian friendly, right? And they want to demolish it and build something else there. And I'm like, okay, so you're gonna build another high rise with like, you know, I don't know, an expensive salad restaurant in the bottom, and where are we going to have these like museums and these things and stuff like that?
Can I make a complaint about an expensive salad restaurant?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Now, my wife and I wouldn't call us health food nuts.
Right.
But we try.
You try.
We try, and we are all for, small business, local business. We ate at a place. There's a couple of them called Carrot Express. It was me, Stephanie, Link, and Wes is still not eating food.
Right.
So 3 people. We spent $100.
Oh
it was
my God.
$99.96.
And you all had salads?
No, I had a salmon burger. Lincoln had I can't remember what it was now, and Steph had a bowl.
Right, it was
she had a poke
you
bowl.
know, chucheria food.
Yes, it wasn't anything. Now the food was good. You know, the service was good, but we spent $100.
Right.
And I didn't even have sushi. You know,
Right.
like if I pay $100 and I've got some good sushi, I'm okay.
Right. That's such a like problem because I mean this has been talked about over and over again. We're not saying anything new, but it is because like look, there's a lot of vegan restaurants down here. And I'm sure that you've had a lot of vegan food being a vegetarian. Right. And
Pescatarian.
Pescatarian.
Yeah. I do try not to eat fish as much as possible.
Right.
I'd say probably 90% of my diet is vegan.
Right.
But I do occasionally eat fish.
Although we're having cheese here tonight.
Right.
It's just so expensive and not approachable for a lot of people because I've gone to vegan restaurants that are amazing, just amazing. Pero coño, you have a couple of burritos or like an egg roll or whatever, and you spend $40-$50 for one person.
Their gourmet hummus is
hummus is hummus.
$20.
Yeah, it's so expensive, and then to eat healthy or healthier, it comes at such a premium. And I mean, I understand that these are more expensive ingredients, but it's just it's not realistic for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Now that you're saying that you're vegetarian, because I think a lot of people are always interested in listening to people that are vegetarian or vegan. What made you take that leap?
So it was motivated by 2 things. One was health. I had put on a lot of weight, and over time,
Right.
and I wanted to kind of create a situation where I forced myself to eat smarter, and by cutting out meat, that kind of did a lot of the work for me.
Right.
So if I went into any place with that mindset where like I was forced to either have like a salad or something that was obviously low fat because you're not getting an awful lot of fat in meat substitutes. Sure, you got stuff like nuts and stuff like that that have got fat, but that's the good fats.
Right. Your avocado, your olive oil.
Right. Stuff like that. It's the good fat. Kind of like how I think of myself. I'm the good fat.
You're the good fat.
But the other reason was definitely for like the social and political reasons that you hear people talk about all the time. In college, I tried it out. Where I went like totally vegan for vegan, for a very short amount of time. I mean, I think it maybe lasted 3 months, and I didn't have the conviction, and was also smoking an awful lot of pot, and and you'd get hungry,
right.
And once the Frosted Flakes were done,
you're getting the munchies, and it's like, where are my vegan snacks?
It's like I guess I'm gonna double fist this beef jerky here,
right?
So I didn't have the neither the responsibility nor the self-respect or self-control to be able to stick to it. And finally, about maybe 6 years ago or so, I just decided. I said,
but did you quit meat cold turkey? Ba-boom, boom. No pun intended.
I did. Yeah, it was just from one day to the next. Really, the only reason why I haven't given up fish is because it would be really difficult for me to give up sushi. So that is a selfish thing.
Right.
I want to give it up, but I can't.
Right. Okay, well, it's a balance.
Yeah.
I think that I think that a lot of people probably know that being a vegetarian or to a large extent a vegan is obviously healthier. And I think a lot of people are curious about it. That's why I think there's so many questions and about that, because people really are curious. Because it at the end of the day, it is a certain amount of discipline, right?
Yeah.
That you can go and see like a juicy piece of meat or something. Do you still crave it?
No. There is one specific thing that I crave from time to time, and as of yet, I still have not given in to the craving, and that is jamón croquetas, but specifically from Isla Canaria.
Oh, well, the very best.
Right. Yeah. So that's the only thing that from time to time I'm like, oh, I would not kill, because you do have to be respectful of other people, but I would maim for an Isla Canaria.
It's funny because I've told you that I was vegetarian for 11 months.
Yeah.
I almost made it to a year. And to make a long story short, I decided to go vegetarian. It wasn't even a decision. At that time, I was doing consulting work with a pharmaceutical company that had an animal health division. And I was reading like internal memos of the way antibiotics were administered, especially to poultry. The way it was administered.
The worst.
Yeah. It was administered, and like how a lot of times these chickens were, they were like 6 pounds, like a month after they were born.
They can't stand up. They're falling over.
Yeah, and obviously when you pump that much antibiotics into any animal, but specifically chicken, because for chicken it takes longer for it to get out of their system. There's a period where when the antibiotics are pumped into the animals, you have to wait a certain amount of time before they're slaughtered. But a lot of these, chicken grow houses or whatever, they would, once the chicken was weight, they would slaughter it.
Right.
Even if it wasn't the time they had to wait for the antibiotics to... So I was just reading all this like really internal things, and I was just so turned off by it.
Yeah.
That like I remember going, because when I was doing that work, I was working up north. What I mean up north, I mean Broward.
I was thinking this is up in the Michigan.
No, up north Broward, and I would go for like Subway to lunch, for lunch, and I would be like, I'll have the veggie patty today. I'll have the tuna. I'll have the veggie delight.
The veggie delight is my go-to.
Yeah, and it was just like I was so turned off by it. And there came a point that I didn't really crave it anymore.
Right.
Although there was a day that this was probably like 6 months in, so it was like in the middle of my time, that they were making at my parents' house chicharrones, right? And they were making the little bite-sized chicharrones that become really crispy.
Right.
So it's like pork belly.
Right.
Well, it is pork belly. When nobody was watching, I put like a little one, just the little one in my mouth, and I was like, oh, I just saw God. I was like, oh my God, walk away.
Yeah.
Walk away. Walk away.
I have kind of reached that point where like it tastes foul to me.
Yeah.
Because I ordered a wrap once, and they brought me the wrong wrap. It had chicken in it, and you don't know until you bite into it.
Right.
And I bit into it, and it tasted really bad.
Right.
Like if some ingredient had gone rancid.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is awful. This is terrible. I said, Steph, taste this. And she was like, well, it's fine. It just has chicken in it. I was
Right.
Like,
Well, I can tell you,
it was
as
more repugnante than
somebody who deals with chicken on my side hustle with being Pampollo, raw chicken is disgusting. It really is the worst. The worst. But you know what? I think I could go vegetarian again, because my favorite things to eat are not meat. What I know I can't do is vegan, because what you're eating right now, I love me cheese way too much. Like I honestly, I would be very unhappy living without cheese and buttercream and cake. And
Yeah.
you know what? I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I don't mean to offend anyone. I have yet to try a vegan bakery that is as good. Some are good.
Yeah.
Some are good. But they're not. They don't taste the same as a delicious buttercream cake.
So here's my argument to that, because I'm not vegan. I would like to be able to commit to it, but as I said before, my relationship with sushi is prohibiting that.
Oh my gosh.
When you make a decision like that, you are deciding to view food as fuel and nothing more. Not that it can't be enjoyable. For example, we went to Planta Queen.
Cocoa Walk, right?
In Cocoa Walk, yeah. Which, by the way, they've reopened Cocoa Walk.
Yeah.
It's the last time I was there was a couple of years ago.
It's Cocoa Walk 3.0 now.
Yeah. And it was the same but not. It was weird. It's like they put a little plaster all over it, and then it was like, "Hey, here, look at this new place." I'm like, "No, it's Cocoa Walk, man."
Yeah.
But regardless, we went to Planta Queen, and the food was delicious. Oh my god, it's incredible. But that's not why you go vegan.
Right.
You don't go vegan to try to find the best tasting substitute for this thing. You go vegan for all the reasons that people go vegan.
Right. And you know what?
And you kind of have to make your peace with that, or if you can't, it's not really for you.
And you know what? It's a very it's one of these things that's complex but simple at the same time.
Yeah.
Because many times, we make jokes about vegans and stuff like that, but especially for vegans that go vegan for noble reasons, the welfare of the animal is very important, because again, when I was doing this type of work, that we were dealing with like, where they would slaughter cows and poultry, and it's just the conditions of these animals are terrible. And wow, this is a real downer of an argument, of a conversation we're having on our second to last episode of the season. But anyway, but I feel it's something that a lot of people talk about. The welfare of the animal is very important, and there's so many sides to it. I mean, look, I've always been somebody that I have an aversion to hunting. I don't even fish, right? I don't want anything having to do with going and hunting. That's not what I subscribe to. That's not me. And I was always very like, oh my God, how can people be hunters? But when I lived in the Midwest, deer is like, they have a deer overpopulation problem there.
Yeah, it needs to be controlled.
And there's a season where you could hunt for deer. And I remember that a professor of mine who was a hunter, one day he talked to me about it. He's like, when I hunt deer, I know how to shoot that I don't miss.
Right.
So the animal
doesn't
dies
suffer.
immediately, doesn't suffer, and we eat that animal. Like we use that animal. He's not a game hunter. Right. So he's like, that animal is feeding my family, and that animal didn't suffer. What do you think they do to cows? Like even dairy cows, the conditions that they're in, right? And you don't see that. And, yet you have this negative image of hunters. And I have to tell you that it really changed my mind. With that said, I won't go and hunt.
Right.
Right.
So
I'm not a hunter, and I'm not going to do that. But it really changed my mind, because I'm like, that is true, because so many of us are very judgmental about that.
I do think that most hunters, real hunters, not people who like to get dressed up and, go shoot guns. And I do like to go to the shooting range from time to time. It's nothing to do with that. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That person. But a real hunter, I think, is not something. It's not something I can do. I can't bring myself to shoot an animal.
Yeah.
But I can respect a person who hunts an animal, ensures that the animal does not suffer, and then uses that animal in the way that God intended, as it were, right? Where it's here for you to eat.
Right. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Everybody knows the holidays can be a time of great joy and togetherness with the food, parties, and family. But they can also be a time that causes us to feel anxiety, stress, or even depression. And let's face it, having your tia tell you que cambies la cara during dinner doesn't exactly help. What you need, and maybe your tia también, is a gift to yourself. The ability to speak with a professional about your experiences. Enter BetterHelp. A customized online therapy provider, BetterHelp offers therapy options that align with your time via phone, video, text, or even live chat sessions with a certified therapist. BetterHelp's customized approach matches you with a therapist in under 48 hours based on your needs and creating the opportunity to help you better understand yourself. And as a special offer for Pero Let Me Tell You listeners, you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/pero. It's already more affordable than in-person therapy, and now you can save on your first month. There's even a gifting option if you'd like to help someone you care about understand the benefits of therapy in their life. We should all have a happy holiday season, and BetterHelp has helped millions take the first step in that path. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/pero. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast and this episode. Yeah, it really changed my mind on it, pero bueno. Moving right along. Let's leave that behind. Oh, yeah. So this weekend on Netflix premiered Meaghan and Harry.
Right. Yeah, it's all over my
any of it?
Netflix. I haven't seen it yet, no.
So this week actually on...
Christmas break is coming up, so I'm sure I'm going to watch it soon.
So on Thursday, I got up really early and I had some downtime in the middle. And I was literally in my car. And, in my car I could watch Netflix. It's the best thing about having a Tesla, by the way. not paying gas is that I get to have Netflix.
Right. I was going to say, I think there's one other thing that's
not paying
better.
gas. I watched the first 2.5 episodes and I'm hooked. And, a lot of it, I don't know how much you follow the Meaghan and Harry thing.
Not much. I know as much as probably the average person knows.
Okay. So
maybe a little more because
I'm
a
a little bit of an Anglophile in the sense that I love British monarchy history. I love it because I love history in general. And always, since I was in high school, I mean, if you look at my library downstairs, I have books about the British monarchy because I just find it interesting in both the good and the bad. Because in the one sense, I think it's like the traditions and the fact that it's so British and the fact that this monarchy has maintained itself
and yet so French.
for 1,000 years. I think it's quite remarkable that that institution has survived for over 1,000 years. But at the same time, I think it's also bullshit. And I think it's archaic. And, obviously...
But we were talking about the preservation of certain things.
Right.
And even though... you can definitely make the argument that it's a carryover of like the colonial days, and it's not a good look anymore. I think that they've kind of moved past that, and maybe question mark. I see it more as like the casual observer of the monarchy, not as someone who follows what's going on with them. I see it almost as like the Pope.
With the Pope.
It's a role that you take on, and it's mostly just symbolic.
Symbolic, right?
Yeah.
It's for pomp and circumstance.
Right.
But, the whole thing with Meaghan and Harry, on the one hand, they keep saying, Meaghan and Harry, that their life is so overexposed, paparazzi, people are always talking about them, so on and so forth. So I don't know. I think making a documentary is probably not the wisest choice in terms of keeping a low profile. Mm-hmm. Right? So in that sense, it's like, okay, I mean, that you're going to get a lot of press by doing this documentary, and yet this is what you're complaining about, right? But on the other hand, and really the way that I feel about it, what they're saying there is not untrue. Like, they're calling out the bullshit for what it is. And
which they've been doing from the very start, no?
Right, because, one of the things... So I followed the whole Meaghan and Harry thing for two reasons. Because, again, I love the British monarchy and the whole history behind it. Mm. But also, I was a Meghan Markle fan because Suits is, like, my favorite show. right? So I had known of Meghan Markle since 2010 when Suits started, and she had a very big role in that show.
Right.
And I loved her. Like, I love Meghan Markle. She's gorgeous. And even before, one of the things I liked about her, I mean, I don't know how much you knew or didn't know about her before.
Very little.
You know, she was...
I knew she was on Suits.
She was quite the philanthropist.
Right.
She was even one of like the UN's like Women of the Year. This was way before she met Harry. You know, she was a philanthropist. She kind of had a lifestyle blog. She was like one of these like really modern like women of the of now, and she was beautiful, and like I really really liked her. And she was on my favorite show. So I had been following, I had a little bit of like a double interest in this whole thing going on. And I mean, obviously you know about like the media coverage that she got that was,
Right.
I mean, there's certainly a racial element. And then,
absolutely.
Did you hear the whole thing when she first started dating the tabloid or publication in the UK that said that she was straight out of Compton?
Yes.
I mean, what the hell is that? Like, how can you say it's not about race when you have comments like that, or that she's from the wrong side of town? She grew up in the Valley. She went to like one of the best Catholic school all girls schools in like LA. I mean, she's not. Her dad was a lighting director for Married with Children. And
was he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was. Okay. And so she knew, she grew up on the set of Married with Children. Mm-hmm. And she even did this whole thing when she was a little girl, that they have the footage of it where I think it was Ivory Soap had a commercial that it said, women across the country are ditching their soap for the new Ivory Soap. And she wrote a letter to Procter & Gamble or Ivory or whatever saying, hey, it's a little bit sexist that this was the early 90s, that in like 1991, you're saying women all over the country when, you're enforcing a stereotype that only women do the dishes, blah, 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 blah. Right. And you know that they changed the commercial?
Really?
Because of her letter. So, she's definitely somebody who had a presence about her. But I just think that they are going where no one has gone before. I think that his mom, Princess Diana, she was a victim in all of this, and at the end of her life was when she finally started fighting back. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think that these people were like, we're not taking this shit. Yeah. We're fighting back from the beginning. Right. And a lot of it's pissed off a lot of people. I mean,
well, there's an establishment that does not like to be messed with. Yeah. And that happens everywhere. And obviously, we're in America, and we hear a lot about the race problems here. Yeah. But England has just as big an issue over there. There's a movement, to that has been around for a while to keep England white, as they say. Yeah. And I remember I first became aware of this with Eric Clapton.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he is a profound racist. And I am...
Eric Clapton is a racist?
Eric Clapton, yes.
Layla Eric Clapton? Tears in Heaven?
I struggled with this because he is one of my favorite guitar players, one of my favorite songwriters. Eric? Because it is pervasive. It is pervasive in England. And a lot of that goes back to the establishment, to the monarchy, that, there's a certain social class that, you or I or, people who
common
are
folk.
Like you or me should not be a part of.
Yeah. Common folk. I think that a lot of people, when they criticize them, they take it personal insofar that they're attacking the queen, especially now that the queen passed away. I don't think they're attacking the queen. I think in all their criticism, it's the institution. Right. It's not the queen. That's why when they had to sit down with Oprah, I was sort of happy that they purposely said, hey, the king and the at that time, Prince Philip, these comments have not come from them. They made it very clear. But I don't know. I just think that, again, they're saying their truth, and they're saying what we know. Because it's so funny. Remember in the Oprah interview, what made the headlines was that she said publicly that they were having conversations as to what color.
Right. Yeah.
I
remember that.
remember having that conversation with my dad way before the Oprah interview, saying, I bet you that within the walls of that Buckingham Palace, the, you know, monarch insiders are probably like freaked out that they may have a black monarch, you know, or a mixed race monarch. They're probably like losing their shit over this.
Yeah.
Because you know that that's the type of petty shit, you know, that still exists within the institution. It may not be a reflection of the monarch or the sovereign themselves,
right,
but of the institution at large, right? And then when she said that, I was like, see, that's what we were saying.
Right, yeah.
That these people were probably saying that. And I think everybody knew that.
Because
they just said it on the Oprah interview.
Those issues are those issues everywhere.
Yeah.
And anywhere where there is an institution, there is institutionalized racism.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And I think that they're doing important work in speaking out against it.
Yeah.
Because so often, you know, we criticize the rich, the famous, the powerful for not speaking out, and then when they do, it's like, well, hang on, stay in your lane.
Right.
You know, we want to see you act, or we want to hear you sing. We don't want to hear what you have to say about XYZ issue. But we're also saying that you need to do more. You know, it's that sort of like,
estás entre la espada y la pared. No ganas de una forma o de otra.
Exactly.
You're damned if you do and damned
and
if
you're
you
damned
don't.
if you don't. And so, you know, if you're going to be damned either way, you might as well speak your truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I, to kind of switch gears, I am the biggest Indiana Jones fan I know.
Bigger than Bond? Because that's something you and I share.
That's man, that's a tough one. So
for our listeners, I'm a huge Bond fan. I think I've made that clear in 233 episodes. But I only have a handful of people that are as big as Bond fan as me, and David is one of them. You know, we talk Bond quite frequently.
Quite frequently, yeah. I don't know that I'm a bigger Bond fan than Indiana Jones fan. Mm-hmm. But there's more Bond than Indiana Jones.
Right. You have more to work with.
So there's more
iterations.
Right. There's more to work with. So I can be in the mood to watch a Moore film, or I can be in the mood to watch a Connery film. And yet I'm still in the mood to watch a Bond film. Either way. But Indiana Jones is Indiana Jones. Now, my favorite movie of all time is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
As much as I love Casino Royale, as much as I love Casablanca, which is another one of my favorite movies, it will always be Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's your favorite movie of all time.
Favorite movie of all time, and I recognize that it is not the best movie, because I will die on the hill of Casablanca being the best movie of all time.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Do you disagree? What do you think?
I mean, look, I'm a movie buff, although I haven't watched as many movies in the last few years as I should have. Excuse me. I mean, I think it's hard to say what is, because, you know, most movie buffs will say that Citizen Kane is the greatest movie of all time.
I wouldn't disagree with them, but I also would put forth Casablanca.
I mean, it's hard because, like, I know it's very cliche, but I think The Wizard of Oz is one of the best movies of all time.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
It's not one
either.
of my favorites.
Right.
I mean, if I were to make a list of 100 of my favorite 100 movies, The Wizard of Oz would be there. But, I mean, it's kind of hard because, like, each era kind of had different, I mean, yeah, Casablanca's up there. But, I mean, obviously those movies at that time were about the storytelling because they weren't about the technical aspects of it,
I disagree. I think that there's a lot of really technical things that's happening in a lot of those movies. A lot of it's being invented at that time. Guys like James Whale, who did Frankenstein and The Invisible Man, it literally invents shots.
Yeah,
it's incredible, some of the stuff. Now you look at what you can do today. With computers and with programming crane shots and stuff like that,
because I think that back
on a technical aspect, the movies today are
back then even up
better,
up through like the 50s and 60s. I think it was about the performance. Mm-hmm. The technical aspects I think were more secondary because when you think of like these great actors and actresses of like the golden era, like Cary Grant,
James Cagney,
Bette Davis, Joan Crawford, all these people, it was like they're over the top performances.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of an extension of the stage actor.
Yeah.
So I kind of get that.
I have a hard time. Man. Listeners, what's your favorite movie? So Casablanca's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, yeah. And so after...
Well, I mean, tell us
after
about
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, Part 4, which I understand a lot of people don't like it. I really like it. It is not my favorite in the series. I would say it's the worst in the series. But I really like it. I thought it was never going to happen again.
Right.
And so here we are, what are we, 14 years later, and we've got a new Indiana Jones movie. And I think that's something incredible, because the trailer has come out. This is the first one that Steven Spielberg is not directing. It's being directed by James Mangold, who did Logan and The Greatest Showman. A very competent director in his own right. Did you see the trailer?
I have.
And?
Oh no, it looks great.
Yeah.
It looks great, but to me, like in the last 10 years especially, not that I get turned off by trailers, but I realize especially recently, trailers is the best of the best.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, the trailer is always going to be good nowadays.
Trailers either give you way too much or not enough.
Right. Sometimes I like the not enough.
I do too, but then you can get thrown off by something like did you see Barbarian recently? No. I felt like they didn't give you enough, and I was like, oh, okay, this is great. They're not going to ruin the movie. And then I saw the movie, and I was like, oh, no.
What's going to be different about this Indiana Jones? So it would be the fifth one.
Well, it looks like they're going back to, the old school Indiana Jones where there's Nazis. Because it's going to start in the 1930s and the 1940s with him fighting Nazis. They're using some sort of crazy a de-aging technology that Lucasfilm has invested for Harrison Ford a gazillion dollars in. Those scenes where he looks like a young man is not cut footage from previous movies. That's computerized. Right. It's crazy. It's insane. So there's going to be some of that. It looks like they're going to keep it more grounded than the last one was. A lot of people didn't like the sci-fi element.
The whole refrigerator part.
That was crazy. that was crazy, but I laughed.
Yeah.
The moment for me in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull that I was like, nah, it's stupid, was when Shia LaBeouf swings on the vines like Tarzan. To me, that was stupid.
Let me ask you something, because I don't know this. When they did that movie, was there any talk of Shia LaBeouf? Because Shia LaBeouf did that movie when his career was in an upswing.
Right.
Was there any talk of him continuing the series?
Not by Lucasfilm. The media, yes. Fans were saying, okay, well, they're going to, give the role to Shia LaBeouf next, and they're going to keep the series going. George Lucas came out and said, we've never discussed that.
Yeah. Because I could have seen that happening. I mean, I love Indiana Jones as well. I would say my favorite is probably the Temple of Doom.
That's a lot of people's favorites.
It's fun. Now, with that said, I do think Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best one.
Yeah.
It is the best one. And you know what? I remember as a kid watching The Last Crusade, which... that should be our favorite.
Right, because Connery's in it, yeah.
And the part when he has to cross, the bridge.
Yes.
The Holy Grail thing. And being like, oh my God, this is, the best thing ever. I just think that Indiana Jones is just one of those fun movies that it's just a pleasure to watch.
To me, it's a celebration of old Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's real stunts. And even in the last one where there was some CG in it, it was mostly real stunts.
Yeah.
And it's real guys in peril doing these, fantastical things that really isn't done much in Hollywood anymore. Yeah. You watch a movie like Fast and Furious or like Transformers, even the Marvel movies.
Do you still watch the Fast and Furious?
No.
So
I'm not a big fan.
I was into the first, I don't know, 20 of them.
Yeah.
I think
I've seen the first 4
I think
or
they
5.
were good up to 5.
Okay.
With the one in Brazil. Oh my God, that one was amazing.
That's the last one I saw.
So I was really into it because at that time I was really into car culture and racing.
Right.
I was in my early 20s. I loved it. I loved it. But I think at this point in time, I still watch them. I'm faithful to it. But I don't watch it as... to me, it's not the same viewing experience. To me, the first set of films was like, man, Vin Diesel's badass.
Yeah.
You know, the racing scenes. Like, when they brought in The Rock, it was like, oh my God. Like, you were just waiting for that scene.
Well, it elevated the series to a whole different level.
Right, between The Rock and Vin Diesel. Now I just watch it to be like, okay, what ridiculous bullshit are they gonna do now? Like,
yeah, I get that, and someone framed it in a way where I kind of understood it because I used to just shit on the series constantly. I never liked it. The second one was the only one I cared for at all because I feel like it kind of leaned into the campiness of the first one.
yeah,
The first one took itself way too seriously.
yeah.
And the way they put it was like, I'm a really big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan. And some of Schwarzenegger's best movies are the ones that are the most ridiculous.
One of my favorite movies of his is The Last Action Hero,
It's incredible.
which everybody shitted on that movie.
But it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And yeah, it is ridiculous. It's way over the top. Commando is one of my favorite of his. And I think that might be the most over the top action movie ever made. That's what they said. They were like, the way you watch Commando, the way you watch Last Action Hero, Total Recall, watch these movies that way. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right, I get it. I get it now.
Yeah.
It's the Schwarzenegger, the Stallone,
Right, it's
the
like
Chuck Norris of
over
today.
the top, like.
But I think it's just because, with the exception of The Rock and Jason Statham, we really don't have action heroes anymore. And that's part of why I really love like Harrison Ford's movies, because like he played great action heroes, whether it was Han Solo, whether it was Indiana Jones. He played action well.
You know, it's so funny that now that we're talking about that, I would be every time a new one would come out. I'm like, so are they going to space this time? Like, are they going underwater? You know,
And then they did in the last one.
so yeah, that's why. Like, you could never say what they're going to not do because they'll probably do it. So you know,
Can I ask you a question? Because I wonder if this was just my grandfather. Because it seems in the limited conversations I've had about this specific action hero, it seems like the Cuban community gravitated towards him. Charles Bronson.
of course,
Okay.
of course. Okay, I'll share it here on the podcast. So so when I was a kid, this was, my parents built a huge family room towards the back of the house. But when I was a kid, we didn't have the family room yet. So the main living room of the house was like where the TV was.
Right.
Right. So where my room is, the hallway, if I stood in front of my door of my room, it was at the end of the hallway. I could see towards the other end of the hallway, and at the end was the TV.
Right.
Because it was like diagonal.
Uh-huh.
And then the living room was on the other side. So my parents watching TV in the living room wouldn't know that
You were watching
Right.
what they were watching. Yeah.
Exactly. My parents one day put on a Charles Bronson movie, and it was what is it, Death Wish?
Which one?
Okay. I was David, I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And I remember the rape scene. I saw the whole movie.
It must have been one or two. Actually, there's a rape scene in 3 also.
The one in the kitchen. And then I'll never forget. So these are like how your memory
That's
works.
that first one.
So there is a scene, because I remember then that his daughter becomes a mute, I think.
Yeah, that's the
And
first
then
one.
there is a scene where she jumps out of a window
That's
and
part two.
impales herself.
That's part 2. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
In California, he
I
moves from New York.
remember
Yeah.
that scene, right? I never saw that movie again. That traumatized me. I never spoke of it. Nothing. It was like, that happened. My parents never knew I watched it, whatever.
Right.
When I mean years later, I mean I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s. I didn't even know that was the movie was Death Wish.
Right.
I remember I had come home from going out and I was scrolling the TV, and this movie was on, and I'm like, what is this? I had never seen this again. I'm like, what is this?
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is that movie. And that movie completely traumatized me. That movie was effed up.
It really is, and the
His
rape
movies are
scene,
super violent.
The rape scene in part 2, I think, is actually even worse than part 1. Oh yes, please top me off. My grandfather was a huge Charles Bronson.
Yeah, it is definitely a Cuban thing.
Yeah, and I never saw the first 3 actually until I was much older. I was a teenager in high school and I was renting them at Blockbuster. Yeah. But Death Wish 4, it seemed like he was always watching that one, and that one doesn't have a rape scene. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's not sexual at all. Mm-hmm. And it's just like the violence is so over the top.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that with him a lot.
You know what I think it was? I think it was that this was probably like late 80s, early 90s. Remember back then it was video stores? Right. So I think just people would be like, mira estos videos de Charles Bronson.
Right.
Las películas son muy buenas.
But I don't I mean, he's Polish or Hungarian, you know? Where does that connection?
Where wasn't a great actor, you know?
No, he wasn't a great actor, but and he was weirdly in shape. Oh my gosh,
you know a movie my parents loved? They would watch all the time, Alain Delon.
Oh, yes, The Frenchman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Rocco and his brothers.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I mean, it's a generational thing.
Alain Delon did a movie with Charles Bronson.
Oh, well, of course.
In the early 70s called Red Sun.
Uh-huh.
And who else is in it?
This is your learn section of the day, people.
Yeah, the more you know. But Toshiro Mifune, who the Cubans, I come to find out, are also huge fans of. Yeah. How they became a fan of a Japanese actor, I have no idea. Because my grandparents don't speak a lick of Japanese. Yeah. And Ursula Andress.
Oh, well, of course. Bond Girl.
Bond Girl. The Bond Girl.
The Bond Girl.
Yeah.
The bikini.
It is a really good movie. It's a Western.
Yeah. Oh. Who knew?
Strange. Yeah.
Who knew?
A weird cast, but really good.
You know, now that we're talking about movies, so listeners, you could use this against Ish. Okay? So get ready, listeners. Do you know it's one of the things Ishmael and I disagree with the most? We've had fights on this. We don't talk about it anymore. We don't talk about Bruno. We don't talk about it anymore.
Musicals, right?
Well, no, I don't like musicals.
Right.
No, but in terms of movies.
Okay.
So Ishmael hates and thinks that one of the worst movies ever made is Titanic.
Worst ever?
He hates it. He thinks it's trash. And I'm like, you just want to be difficult.
Okay, so I love Ish. Mm-hmm. He is he and I are two peas in a pod.
Yes.
You
could say it.
However, I'm baffled sometimes by what he has to say about movies.
Imai, are you hearing this?
I don't get it sometimes. Where and he's been on Shiver on a number of occasions because he's a horror hound, and he and I usually agree on the show, but it's sometimes like we'll just mention something in passing. We're just hanging out, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
When we saw No Time to Die together,
Right.
he really didn't like it.
He hated it.
Yeah.
He hated it.
I didn't understand that.
And I could understand, like, when we saw No Time to Die, the Bond film, I could understand that, you know, him and other people are not going to see it the way you and I did. You know, because remember when you and I saw it, we were like...
seeing it with the lens.
We were like, look at all these Easter eggs.
Right,
like, I get the average
nostalgia.
person is not going to pick up on that. Mm-hmm. But Ishmael, I always make fun of him. And he makes fun of me for the same way, too, in my own way. I always say, you don't like this for Ishmael reasons. You know? So Titanic, like, we used to have fights over Titanic because Titanic is one of my favorite movies. I love ocean liners.
Right.
So when they were making a movie on Titanic, and it's done, I mean, obviously, you know how immaculate the replication of the ship was.
Yeah, it's astounding the level of detail.
Tapestry, they had the original designs, like all that. To me, the ship is a character in the movie.
Absolutely.
Right? And, you know, it could not be you don't have to like the movie. It doesn't have to be one of your favorite movies. And I understand that the love story between Jack and Rose a lot of times is a little like...
It's weak. I think it's weak.
And, you know, there's a little too much Jack, Rose, I trust you. I get that criticism. But as a totality... That's an epic movie.
I think that's a game changer movie.
Of course.
And it's definitely not in my top 10 or top 25. I might put it in my top 100.
Yeah.
But I think on a technical aspect, that movie is
of course.
it's a masterclass in what some filmmakers the lengths that some filmmakers go to for authenticity.
And it's epic. It's an epic movie. I mean, maybe you as a movie buff, because I know you're a movie buff, you like it as well. There's few things I enjoy more than sitting down knowing I'm going to be 3 to 4 hours watching a movie.
If I have the time for it, yes.
It's like, so that's why
But it also depends on the movie. I can watch 3 hours of Titanic and be fine. And be better than fine. I can be happy. Something like Gone with the Wind. Mm-hmm. No. I think that's one of the most overrated movies of all time.
I think Gone with the Wind, you watch it, I wouldn't say it's overrated, but it's not an easy watch. Because, I mean, also movies from that time, the continuity was a little bit different.
Yeah, but I mean, look, just a couple of years after that, you've got a movie like Lawrence of Arabia, which is just as long, and to me, that movie is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much I really buy into that. I think it's just a bad movie. I think they're unlikable characters.
Yeah.
The pacing is really slow.
So you know what's funny? Gone with the Wind was one of those movies. For being a movie buff, I didn't see Gone with the Wind until I was in my 30s. It didn't. No me llamó la atención.
Yeah.
And you know, you always hear of Scarlett O'Hara. Oh my God, Scarlett O'Hara. When I finally saw the movie, I'm like, this woman is awful. Like, why do we talk about her so much?
I hated her and Rhett so much that when their daughter died, I was like, good.
Oh, David.
They deserve to suffer because I'm suffering through them.
So you know what's funny? I'm going to pull a Rachel Green from Friends.
Okay.
Well, where else is Rachel Green from? Moment. So I always say that my favorite movie is The Matrix, Part 1. But it's really Pretty Woman.
Okay. All right. I like Pretty Woman.
Well, so it's those two, and then adjacent to it is The Shining.
Right. But I know that The Shining is
like tied. Mm. I love Pretty Woman. Like, I love Pretty Woman. I don't care. Whoever hates that movie, I don't want to hear it. I love it. I love her. I love everything about that movie. I love the soundtrack. I love I like their chemistry. I like everything about that movie. It's one of the few movies that I could almost recite the entire movie.
Raiders, Casablanca, Casino Royale, I can do line for line.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I was talking to, I co-moderate the film club at my high school.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice.
And I was talking to the head moderator, and we were talking about something that we wanted to do with a movie that the students are doing. I said, oh, well, why don't we shoot it like the opening scene in Casino Royale?
Oh.
And he said, oh, I don't remember it. And I said, okay, well, let's put it on. And I put it on for him. And I was mouthing the lines as we were watching, and he looked back at me. He was like, I knew you were a Bond fan, but I didn't know you were like this.
Yeah.
So something else I wanted to talk about.
Because we could talk movies all night.
We could, yes. And, you know, this isn't a movie podcast.
Mm-hmm. That's your podcast.
That is my podcast, yeah. Although we focus on the horror. I got a text message from my wife last week, I think it was. Now she and I are into fashion.
Uh-huh.
We can pick out, you know, specific fashion houses just by cuts and patterns and things like that. We're kind of geeks for it. She tells me Balenciaga is canceled.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, what? Balenciaga?
Yeah.
She is a huge fan of Balenciaga. I'm neither here nor there with their stuff. So it was shocking to hear. And I said, what happened? And she sent me a link to a website. Mm-hmm. Apparently, the ad campaign for their newest collection featured child abuse. And it was like on full display. Have you seen this?
I've only seen one. I've seen the one of the little girl, I think.
Holding the teddy bear.
Holding a teddy bear that was like in bondage or something.
You're right.
That was the only one I've seen. I know there's more.
There is more, and it's all. I wouldn't say it's even suggested child abuse. It's like right there. You know, the bondage, the teddy bear, the look on her face. It's pretty explicit, I would say. And I know that a lot of times we let high fashion get away with certain things because it's art.
Right.
And if you have something to say, go ahead and say it. But you don't see guys like Tom Ford doing stuff like this. You don't see Gucci doing stuff like this. When is art not art anymore? And when are you just an asshole?
Well, I also think that it's the time and place. I think Balenciaga, and I may get some shit from people that are in the fashion world. I can't claim that I know a lot about fashion houses. But I think that a lot of their stuff, whether it's like, those designs that they have that Kim Kardashian has worn that she covers her face, or just their names splattered everywhere, I think they're very kind of like a shock and awe sort of clothing brand, that it's like to be noticed, and it's less about like, I mean, I'm sure there's artistry obviously in what they do, but it's not like a Tom Ford, a Christian Dior, that there is this like
an understated class to it,
right? Yeah. But there's this detail in like the clothing, the embroidery, the cut, the all that. I think theirs is more of a shock and awe, so it doesn't.
Oh my God!
Surprise me that they did that.
I got that Tom Ford jacket in.
Yes.
Okay, I went over it with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah.
This is the best made garment I have ever seen.
That'd be it's a Tom Ford.
Yes, but oh my fucking God, the pick stitching all over it.
Yeah.
Oh. I should have worn it today, so you can
I would have been jealous.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
But as far as I only saw that one picture. I'm sure there's more.
There's more to it, and I mean, I don't know how much how much time you want to spend talking about, something that tends towards like negativity.
Yeah. I mean,
because I also don't know how I feel about cancel culture.
Well, I mean, look, I don't think it's a matter of whether it's canceled or not. I think that this is a situation where I always, in the podcast throughout the 5 seasons we've been on, every time something like this happens, Ishmael and I always say this, with a lot of these like things, these are big press releases or a big advertising campaign. Mm. This is not something that somebody on their own released or did. It's a team effort. Yeah. This is hundreds of people, like from the photographers to the designers to the creative personnel to the editorial staff to all of that to the art staff. Like, wasn't there somebody in that room that said, "Hey guys, maybe this is not the best idea," right?
I have to imagine there was at least one.
That's one of the things that I say, that I'm like, okay, didn't anybody think this was a bad idea? Because a lot of times it's like pretty obvious,
Right. Yeah, so I don't know. The whole thing is confounding to me. And as we're living in a world where high fashion and these big fashion houses, I think, are on the social conscience to an nth degree. Right, thanks to social media, we all, like, Gucci has had a resurgence. Gucci wasn't Gucci after the 80s, and
Tom Ford.
And then Tom Ford, resuscitated it and brought it, he brought it back from the dead. But like you said, that whole idea that it's, shock and awe, even Gucci is going.
I remember when we were teenagers, there was a whole controversy with Calvin Klein that they did this whole ad. This was like not too long after CK1 came out. Maybe you're a few years younger than me, so maybe.
No, but I remember when CK1 was a thing.
It was underage.
Yes.
Kids that they were in like very sexually provocative poses.
Yeah.
And
where they were like topless and wearing like jackets and stuff.
Some of them, it was like very suggestive, and they were like 16, 17.
Right.
And they were, and it was intentional. It wasn't like that it was a 16-year-old model that was emulating an older woman. Mm-hmm. This was very intentional, that they looked really young and they were teenagers, and it was very sexual. There were very sexual pictures, and they got a lot of shit.
Yeah, I mean, the fashion world, I think, tends to lean toward toxicity, because of what the popular view of what beauty is.
Right.
Like I remember when I was in high school, Abercrombie and Hollister were like it. Yeah. And they came under fire all the time for their models, because they were all size 0. Yeah. And have
you seen the documentary on Abercrombie?
I have not. I didn't know there was one.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Really?
So good.
I have
it's
to
called
find
Abercrombie White.
Well, and that was the other thing is they were all white,
Yeah.
blonde, blue-eyed, and very Aryan.
So what was very sort of disturbing was that, I mean, you knew that there was a homoerotic tone to Abercrombie,
Right.
their advertising. I mean, that's fine. You know, we all went to the store, we saw it, you know, and that's fine. And what I didn't know until the documentary is that the photographer and the creative director at that time, I forget his name, a lot of the models, male models, have come forward since then, have come forward saying that he made advances to them.
Oh, really?
And or if they didn't respond, they were shipped home. Like they were sent home, and that's it. You know,
Yeah.
it's great. Watch it.
I've heard a lot of that about photographers.
Yeah.
In the fashion world. Yeah.
I have to
that's
say,
unfortunate.
I freaking loved Abercrombie, and I still have so much Abercrombie clothes. The thing with Abercrombie, especially in the early 2000s, I don't know if you remember, their clothes were like really good quality.
They were, yeah.
I mean, they're super expensive.
Yes, they
I
are.
have in particular, I have these pajamas that are like patchwork.
Uh-huh.
It's like a quilt.
Yeah.
Imagine a quilt but pajama pants.
Yeah.
That it's like each little patch is like separate. It's not a print.
Yeah.
And like I will never get rid of none of that stuff.
I always thought of Abercrombie as kind of like the young Brooks Brothers. You know, it's classic Americana.
Yeah.
But for the younger, more playful person.
The younger, more playful person. I like that.
Yeah. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of defaulted to Brooks Brothers a little more.
Yeah. I'm not there yet. That's something we've talked about on the podcast. My parents would love for me to be. You know, it's funny. The older I've gotten, the younger I dress.
You do dress very young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The older I've gotten, because
You're like a t-shirt and shorts guy.
I am, and you know what's funny? It's just one of those things that comes with ages. I'm more comfortable wearing things now that seem very juvenile that I would have not been when I was younger. It's funny how that works out.
I think I've kind of always been this way. I was always into like sweaters and jackets, and shirts with collars.
Yeah.
You know, chinos instead of jeans.
Yeah.
You know, I'm wearing shorts now because it's comfort.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've kind of always dressed
My
like an old
father
man.
would love you for that. My father wishes that all I dress was from Jose Banks and like Brooks Brothers.
I like Jose Bank.
Like,
and J. Crew. I like J.
super
Crew as well.
conservative.
Yeah.
David, when I was a teenager, my parents for like my birthday or whatever will give me Liz Claiborne shirts.
Oh, I
And
like
I'm
Claiborne, yeah.
Yeah, but not when you're 15.
No, I guess not when you're 15, yeah. In fact, one of my favorite work shirts is a Claiborne.
Yeah. No, porque eso es una camisa fina y bien hecha. And I'm like,
Muy fina.
I'm like,
muy fina.
Dad, please, I'm 15. Give me a break. And now when he sees me with like Jordans, he's like, ay, you know, whatever.
What
So,
is this?
Yeah,
The
so
Jordan.
bueno.
Oye, mi gente, Ish here, and with the holidays happening, we all know that we're about to get caught up in tremendo corre-corre. But that doesn't mean you can't enjoy something delicious while running holiday errands. There's only one solution for awesome Cuban food that's fast. You know we're talking about Cuban Guys restaurants. With 5 locations in South Florida, yeah, even one in Broward, there's no excuse to eat anything else when you're out and about. Beyond exhausted after Black Friday shopping all morning, swing by a Cuban Guys for pan con tortilla y por supuesto un café con leche. Hungry after waiting in line for hours to pick up el lechon? Have some Cuban Guys fritas and un batido. The kids están jodiendo on the way to Tia Gloria's house? Pop in and grab a Cubanito sandwich for them while you enjoy the Cuban Guys sandwich. Cuban Guys restaurants lo tiene todo, and you can dine in or order ahead for pickup or delivery. Así que visit CubanGuysRestaurants.com to find the nearest location and start enjoying the awesome Cuban food you deserve this holiday season.
Bueno, oh wow, we've been talking for over an hour. We gotta wrap up.
Oh, wow.
It's a good time. We're having a good time. So all this talk has made us thirsty. So we're gonna give our last sodas now, and I have a very short and sweet last soda. It's sort of more of a little bit of shout out. So I don't know if you heard, but Celine Dion is really ill.
I saw this today. This
Yeah,
is
she
awful.
has something like stiff neck syndrome.
Stiff person syndrome. Yeah.
Which sounds, it has a sort of funny name.
Yeah.
But it's not
funny at all. Yeah.
So it's like a neurological disease that 1 in 1 million people have. So there's not a lot of research on it. And basically, certain parts of the body can become so rigid that they are almost in paralysis. And a lot of people can, like, you know, as a disease progresses, they could be wheelchair bound, and they need
their bodies can spasm to the point that they fracture bones.
Yeah.
I was reading about this today, and it's awful. It's terrible.
Yeah, it is. And you know, I felt so terrible for her because I mean, Celine Dion is one of these people that I can't say that I'm a huge fan of her music, although I do love My Heart Will Go On because I do love Titanic.
But what a voice.
Yeah, but she's somebody, you know, I've never seen her live, but I would love to see her live.
Yeah.
Because she's one of those, like, people you want to have in that roster that you saw live. And, but I feel that she's always been somebody that has, like, really good energy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just so positive and, like, a little ridiculous and over the top. Like,
and very aware of herself, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
She doesn't take herself seriously, even
Right.
though she's this big balladeer, you know? And it's just so sad to hear. I mean, it would be sad to hear from anybody, but just so sad to hear. So, I mean, I was reading actually a lot about it today, and they said that, like, with the proper therapy, like, they could really slow it down. She says that she's ambitious, that she could pull off touring. When I mean next year, I mean 2024.
Right.
So, you know, all the best to her, and, you know, hope that she has a speedy recovery. But yeah, you know, it sort of sucks. So, you know, my last soda is for Celine.
Yeah, I was really down when I saw that today.
Yeah.
My last soda is going to go out to a different person, and for a very, very different reason. So my last soda is going out to Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg.
Dime.
So the Trump Corporation, the Trump Payroll Corporation,
We're ending with a bang.
were this week found guilty on all 17 charges of tax fraud.
Yes.
And
they were found guilty by a jury.
By a jury.
By a jury. Un jurado.
Yeah. This investigation was not started by Judge Bragg, but it was finished by Judge Bragg. And so, shout out to someone who's not afraid to take on Trump and his oh so shady business dealings. I think that this is a step in the right direction.
I mean, look, I think that whatever your political leanings are, you can't. We need to stop giving these free passes to the wealthy and the powerful, you know. And I'm not against the wealthy and the powerful, because I think right now it's a little bit on brand to, like, hate billionaires and you know, no, none of that. If you're a billionaire and you're rocking it, good for you, awesome. You know, I wish I was a billionaire.
Absolutely.
¿Cómo se llama? But I mean, this whole thing with the Trump organization, this has been happening for years.
Yeah,
they've been talking about this way before he was the president.
One way or another, it's always been dismissed, or, you know, someone was paid off. And
were you ever a fan of his?
Never.
So I have to say,
I've always found him absolutely disgusting.
I have to say that as critical and just awful as he's been, and as much as I've called him out for, I totally ate up The Apprentice to the point
I did watch The
Apprentice. When I was in law school, I had Apprentice viewing parties.
Really?
For, like, the finale. I had two of them.
So
I totally ate up The Apprentice.
Steph and I were fans of The Apprentice. Not for him. We liked the show.
Yeah.
And he was someone that made us laugh.
Yeah.
But we were usually laughing at him, not with him, sort of thing. I never liked him.
But I even think that to a point back then, it's not that he didn't take himself seriously, but I feel that sometimes he was in on the joke as far as the persona. That I think that back then the Trump persona was very much that, a persona, right?
It seemed like it.
It seemed like it.
Yeah.
it was just weird. Things started to get weird and off the rails when that persona became president of the United States.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of see it like a Simon Cowell or a Gordon Ramsay.
Exactly.
You know, someone who's like totally
That's a great
abrasive,
example.
but it seems like it's an act, because when you see Gordon Ramsay outside of you know the shows, he seems like a decent guy.
And celebrities were totally down with Trump at that time.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it probably was an act. But then when he started running for president, I'm like, okay, when is the act gonna stop?
Yeah.
And the act started getting worse and worse because then the act at that time wasn't an outright, racist.
Right.
Wouldn't say the things he said. There's good people on both sides.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So what's gonna be interesting to see is, because you know that in all these like fraud cases with corporations, there's just that whole doctrine of piercing the corporate veil. That it's like, obviously officers of a corporation are not liable for the actions of a corporation. That's the reason why you have a corporation.
Right.
But there is a doctrine called the pierce of the corporate veil, which is when again, like the board or, people high up in a corporation could be found liable for the actions
because they've signed off on documents,
right?
Or there's
and that usually is like that. They knew or should have known. So I would be interested to see how far that's going to go here. If they're going to move on. I mean, they already found the corporation guilty. I imagine they would have made that argument during the trial. But like, what did he know? I mean, it's just obviously with the amount of fraud that they were found guilty of being part of, it's impossible
that he wouldn't have known.
That he and the people high up would have not known.
Yeah.
That would have been oblivious to that. Because it's not a little thing. It's, a big thing. So, pero bueno. Anyway, everybody, that's our show for today, 233. This is our penultimate show, our second to last show. Next week will be our last show of 2022 and our last show of season 5. Not our last show ever, just of season 5 before we take our winter break. So obviously it's going to be a special episode with Ish and I. So David, thank you so much. This has been awesome. We got to do this again.
I had a great time.
More. So tell our listeners where they can find you on Shiver and all that.
So you can find us on shiverpod.com. All of our social media links from there, but we are at Shiverpod at just about everything. Instagram, Twitter, which we're not very active on, but Instagram, Facebook. That's really where you can find, and then anywhere where you find podcasts.
And I have to tell you that I've listened to the show, and I was lucky enough to be on the show. You guys really dissect the movie, like
we do. It's a film critique podcast, I think.
But you really go in all in. All in.
Well, we each have our own areas of expertise, I think. And although I'm not a filmmaker, I have studied film, and I really enjoy film. And the technical aspects of it. So I kind of bring that to the table, and Daniel is really into the occult.
Yes.
And he's really into researching the supernatural and stuff like that. So, together we kind of create this team where, it's like heart and heart.
Right. Very nice. Very nice. So, guys, check it out. So, as always, we hope you listen, laugh, and learn. And remember to grab your croqueta, your pastelito, and your cafecito. And thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great weekend. Good luck Christmas shopping.
We did that
Que ya viene la Navidad. See you all next week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Pero Let Me Tell You is co-hosted by Darian Borges and Ismaeliano, produced by Ismaeliano, and our theme, Pero Let Me Tell You Freestyle, is composed by Michael Angelo Lomlaplex, the official gay guy. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes.